What's up, pod pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you're checking out Podcasting Business School. It's a show where I teach podcasters how to love their show like a hobby and build it like a business. This is a very special podcast audit episode with my friend Nita from the Evolving with Nita Jain podcast. Nita, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm excited. We've interacted a little bit on Instagram, and then you came over to a Pod Pal Zoom party, and now this is like the trifecta of the evolution of being a Pod Pal. So it's time to dig into your show, Podcast Audit Mode. And you've been updating and tweaking, and we kind of had some ideas back and forth. So I'm excited to get an update on that. But first thing, I want you to paint the picture. 6 months from now, things have really kicked up, lots of momentum. Paint that picture for me. So, 6 months, it's looking really, really good. What's that look like for you?
I think 6 months from now, the audience is more engaged. I've hopefully interviewed a lot more people, and I'm able to continue funding the show through grant applications. And I think the impact is bigger than it is in its current form.
Okay.
Which I understand this is a bit of an amorphous answer. There's not like specific goalposts, but I could perhaps better define them.
Well, I mean, maybe that's somewhere to start, is just getting some specific goalposts. And it's not necessarily like if we don't hit X amount of downloads per episode, then epic fail. But I think just having I grew up being an athlete, and I'm kind of I'm not kind of competitive. I'm really competitive. So I won't lie about that. But it always helps me just to have a benchmark to kind of drive towards. It allows me to have more activity. So if I'm like, I want to hit 1,000 downloads per episode or whatever the goal is that you set, then you go, okay, what can I do to boost that a little bit? You kind of get competitive with yourself and you drive towards it. And it's kind of like goals are kind of like the horizon line, right? We're always chasing it and we never actually get quote unquote there, because then we just set another goal. Okay, we got 1,000. Let's go to 2,000. I used to deal with people with my weight loss podcast, my weight loss coaching, same thing. I want to lose 50 pounds. Okay, we lost 50 pounds. I want to lose 100 pounds. It's like no celebration. Let's just move to the next thing. So really, when we're setting goals and as we approach them, let's say we set a goal of, all right, let's get you a top 20% podcast. So that would mean 1,000 downloads per episode at the 30-day mark. And we connect again in 6 months and you are at 700. We're not going, oh, pity party, didn't hit 1,000. We're going, we have to turn around and measure from where you started and go, okay, 6 months ago, I was getting 44 downloads per episode. And now I've more than almost 20x that number. That's something to celebrate. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here, as far as having that benchmark, having a little extra motivation. Maybe you'll set a goal of like, if I surpass this number, then I'm going to buy a new microphone, or I'm going to reward myself with some cool podcast tech or something like that, or anything. And then you measure from where you started and celebrate that. So is that making sense so far?
Yeah, definitely. I love the idea of having a concrete benchmark, but then also evaluating the start point and the progress that's been made so far.
Yeah, that's super important, just because we all have favorite podcasters that we listen to, and we kind of get these weird numbers in our head based off of their Instagram following. Like, oh man, they probably do millions of downloads per episode. And why am I not doing that? My show is just like their show, or my show's better than their show, or whatever. Or my friends started the same time as me and they told me how many downloads they're supposedly getting, so that we can get in our heads about it. So definitely celebrate the all of your personal progress. Now, when it comes to that picture that you painted, what do you feel like is the biggest roadblock that's keeping you from getting there right now? Is there something that you feel like you need to learn? Is there something that you feel like you need to overcome, or anything that's getting in the way of that progress that you're looking to make?
I think marketing is something that I'm still learning as I go. And so far, anything I've done for growth has mostly been organic, mostly appearing on other people's podcasts, promo swaps, collaborating with other creatives. But I also think that it's a bit of a process, and I don't know if there is necessarily like a fast track to getting more growth. So I guess I'm on the slow and steady path. And
this, podcast growth takes time, and very rarely, especially if you're starting kind of a brand new brand with no Instagram following, no email newsletter list, no subscribers, it's just going to be like, you have to start from ground zero and go, all right, here is fan number 1 and here's fan number 10. And then it kind of catapults from there, but it does take time. Like, this is something that, how many episodes have you released now?
Just 12. So
Okay.
pretty new.
Yes. So the first 50-ish episodes, the first year, you're going to do a lot of figuring out of, like, talk about evolving. Like, you're going to be doing some evolving. Like, Nita Jain is going to be evolving, and her show is going to be evolving, and you're already doing the right things. And the nice thing about being only 12 episodes deep is that you're going to, like, you don't have a giant following right now. So this is the time to experiment and to tweak and to go, okay, I'm going to try. Like, I know you added a subtitle because we talked about naming on Instagram. I was like, Nita, who is evolving with Nita Jain? And now you added the subtitle, and that's going to help with SEO. And that's part of bringing the right people in. And we're getting to weekly content. That's another giant step in the right direction. So you're you're course correcting very effectively. You're implementing on stuff that we've already discussed. And I think that now marketing, it's going to be, for you, it's going to be a lot about when you do start to get feedback, you need to be prepared with a few questions. Like, so if somebody DMs you on Instagram, oh, I love your show, this episode was great. Like, obviously there's some back and forth. We thank them for, supporting the show and all that, but then have 2 or 3 questions that you would love to fire at that person and go, hey, why do you love this episode? Is it the content? What do you think about this or that? Or what is, one topic that you would love to see me cover in the show? How did you find me? What were you searching? Like, having some of those things so that we can A, build super fans, and B, kind of reverse engineer how they became a super fan. And we can go, okay, they found me on Instagram. Let's start adding a little more attention and marketing time on Instagram or wherever they found you. Like with me, I used to really stress out about my website, SEO, all this stuff. And then every time I get a DM on Instagram or somebody emails me, I was going like, how'd you find me? Where'd you find me? And none of them are from my website. They're all finding me in podcast players. They're like, I search podcasting tips, your thing pulled up in Apple, and I started listening. And I'm like, okay, so I can spend less time. Like, I was blogging for every episode and doing all this stuff. And I was like, that's probably a waste of time for me. Let's make sure I really understand this SEO inside of the podcast players. So I spent more time doing that. Now I can market more effectively with that. Is that making sense so far?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like everyone has those unique advantages depending on, I think for you, it was SEO because people are mostly finding you through the podcast player apps. I think for me, it's people are finding me through my Substack and the organic network that exists there. So I guess the discoverability is kind of different for different podcasters too.
You're exactly right. And this first year, again, is you figuring all that out. Like, where are my people hanging out? And then once you find that vein, you start to get in there and like, wow, that person just got into the show. And then that person, and then, wow, that person donated on Patreon, or this person, you start to see people come out of the woodwork to actually support you. Just my number one bit of advice for you is like, just stay in that little vein. Don't get distracted and go, and how about TikTok over here? Let's see what's happening. Like, no, just your time is limited. Your resources are limited. You find a vein that's really working. So for me, like this time last year, Clubhouse was cranking, and I was in there and I would find new listeners and new, Instagram followers. And then it kind of tapered down a little bit, but while it was hot, I was like, I'm going to spend as much time as possible on this app because it's super effective. Now I did a little experiment with Pinterest, and it was kind of Cricketville. And I was like, I just don't know enough about it. Don't care to spend enough time on there when I already know Instagram is working. When I still get invited to speak in other people's rooms in Clubhouse, I'll go on there and I do well with it still. So it's easy to get distracted at this point. So I guess that would be another bit of advice, is like, you are going to start to see what's working and where people are coming out and meeting you and finding you, and just double down on that and go. I think you could also do well, like in the like industry newsletters and things like that. So what newsletters that you subscribe to or that talk about similar topics are, what do they have advertising opportunities? And even if they don't, if you approach them, I have people that do this all the time. I'm like, what newsletters do you subscribe to? Whose emails do you actually like opening? And they'll come back, but like, they don't have ads. I'm like, okay, maybe you can be the first one. And that's probably going to be a lot cheaper than once they figure out they can actually start charging for newsletter ads. So reach out if they don't have an obvious advertising platform, and just go, hey, I have a show that I think our content is very complimentary. Do you accept ads, or would you be interested in a promotional partnership? And what would you charge for that? Like, I've got a newsletter that I advertise in once a week, and it's $29, and I will get 50 to 75 email addresses every time. So we're talking about 50 cents per email. That's great. Like, I can't run a Facebook ad and get those kind of results. So little things like that, that's something that we can experiment in. And these are good people for you to be connected with anyway. So maybe they host a live event that you could be a speaker at, or a panelist on, or something like that. And now you're a member of the media either way. So if they do have live events, like, you can get a media pass and you don't pay for tickets anymore, Nita, Jain. So all these things, like, I see you, I've seen you speak, and you're very well spoken. You are like brilliant with what you say, and you have great opinions about things. So like, I would really push you to go, okay, what are the industry events? Who has these newsletters? Where can I show off my style within my niche, and kind of be that spotlight person? So any ideas cranking out of those things there?
I think I've mostly done speaking engagements as far as appearing on other people's podcasts, as far as people who are kind of talking about health or self-improvement. Some podcasts just have this idea that share your one big idea with me, and I love speaking on those things. I think I'd mostly just tend to gravitate towards stuff that's in my wheelhouse, because there's so many different things that you can speak like for 60 minutes on unprepared. And so I just basically kind of dive into those on occasion. And it was great doing like the Instagram, the live, like around the pod with you guys.
Yeah.
I think it was like the first all-female panel that we had with you, which was really great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to say really quick that I think you're really great at networking and like connecting people together. So I just really appreciate everything that you do in that regard.
Well, that's what I love to do. And so here's the thought that has recently kind of helped me out, as far as I see you speaking on like live stages as well. Like, if you can speak on podcasts, you can speak on live stages, and be a paid speaker. So what I would challenge you to do is come up with some niche topics within the health space. Like, the broad umbrella you're in is health, which is, there's a lot of health things going on. Mm-hmm. But let's say, year one, like, you're in year one of your show, and you like a big health event is Paleo FX, and you reach out and you're like, I'm a member of the media. I've got the show called Evolving with Nita, Jain. I'd like a press pass to Evolving FX. And they let you in. You start networking and interviewing people, and you meet a whole bunch of cool people, blah, 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 blah. That would be like a nice year one goal. I want to get a free ticket to Paleo FX and meet all these people, make all these connections. But if you do that, you're going to meet some of their media people, and like some of the people that are decision makers within the Paleo FX team. Then I want you to come up with your own like TED Talk that makes you a one-of-one speaker, and only you know that. But you niche it down so much that it is like XYZ number of tips for this topic, according to a very niche group. So it'd be like 4 ways that women under 30 should be using intermittent fasting, or something like that. Like, really very specific, very niche. And it's not going to be like 12 diet tips. Like, everybody has those, but like real specific and like unique for the event. And that will really appeal to them, so that year 2, when the speaker enrollment comes out, you already know somebody in the marketing department, and you can hit them up and be like, hey, I want to do the press pass thing again, but I also applied to be a speaker. Make sure you keep an eye out. Here's what I'd like to talk about. And you drop that one-liner on them. Like, this is the unique niche down topic. They're going to eat that up. And I think you'll get on stage, and then you get on stage, you do your thing. You're going to pick up a lot of listeners at an event like that. And you already have connections from people from the year before. So I would hone in on 2 or 3 events like that, and let's start working on some networking like that and play the long game, because you got time. You're a young entrepreneur in the game, and you're kind of just figuring this thing out. So that'll give you a year of producing content and getting better at that and kind of tweaking your niche. I think that you could crush it with a strategy like that. So any thoughts there?
I love that strategy. And I feel like it is well suited to the chart that I'm trying to follow as well. And it's funny that you mentioned intermittent fasting, because recently I have been creating more content around how intermittent fasting affects gut health specifically, which is kind of like a more niche topic like you were talking about.
Yes.
So yeah, that's
Yes.
It's quite prescient that you mention it.
Well, I love that. So intermittent fasting for gut health, that's like, intermittent fasting is a sub niche of health. So, and it's a popular one. And then for gut health, a sub niche within. And then if you like, I would challenge you to like, how can we make it even more niche? And then you add in for females under 30,
Absolutely.
like adding that, because there's still going to be, Paleo FX is a giant event. There's going to be, how many hundreds or thousands of women under 30 that are interested in gut health and intermittent fasting, but it's so like specific. Like I'm talking to you because you represent that person as well. And so like, oh, this is a relatable person. And like, I have a few friends in the intermittent fasting space and they freaking kill it. Like they do real well. But if you can be that specialized gut health person, that way you don't get lumped in with everybody else that's talking intermittent fasting, that's unique.
Definitely.
Like stuff like that. Like I saw a guy speaking about intermittent fasting for sexual health. Talk about like an eye, like people's ears perk up. Like what's it like? How does this affect that stuff? So like be that person that's oh, this is different. This is a different talk. So be unique, stand out, and that's going to help you with your brand. And also practice some of this with your podcast episodes. Like put some of these niche down topics as your episode titles, and let's see how people react to it and see if it gets more play or if it pulls up better on Google and things like that. So I think that's the through line of our conversation today is like, you're just getting started. Do experiment with your show, have a really experimental mindset, no pressure. Evolving with Nita Jain is evolving, and like you're going to figure out a lot of cool stuff here in these first 50 or so episodes. So is that making sense?
Definitely. I really like the suggestion to niche down even further and talk about women under 30, because women do have really specific nutritional needs, because there's so many things that they go through in terms of hitting menarche, hitting menopause, and nutritional needs change based on those life events. And it's interesting because intermittent fasting really does kind of overlap with nutritional needs for women, because, the thing is, a lot of the time you get this advice that it's good to exercise on an empty stomach. Now, for women, that's not really the case. The evidence suggests that protein loading ahead of time is actually going to lead to better gains in muscle mass. So I think talking about those nuances, like, how can women maintain their muscle? Because the advice is going to change. There are gender specific needs. So I love the idea of incorporating, intermittent fasting and gut health and women's personalized nutrition. That's really
well. And you just proved to me and everybody else that you can talk on this. That you just cranked out like there are 3 different topics you could just done episodes on right there of what you just said. Like that you could have just broken that down. That's a 3-part series, and that's your TED Talk, and that's your keynote speaker thing. Like, so this is going to be something that I would spend some time with. So I really think, if I was you, I would sit down and go, okay, what is the niche? What am I really excited about? What would a 17-minute TED Talk look like? If I was to bullet point this thing out, what are the real key takeaways? Because the next step is going, okay, and you could practice this again with your show and see how the reaction is. But like if you were to do a TED Talk or a keynote, it's a little bit different because we have to get the really action-based steps out there.
right.
That'll make you stand out as a speaker too. It's not all the background, and we got to drop science on them. It's like, but I need you to do this, this, and this. Like when I go on stage at PodFest, I'm not like, and here's why podcasting is important these days. It's just like, I need you to do these 5 things, and it's going to get more people listening to your show. let's just talk about those and that's it. Now with you do have to explain some science, but then you go, okay, now this is the specific, like the protein loading. That's a very specific tip. I love that. That's something they can go, okay, I'm going to try that. And every time they do it, guess who they think of? You and your show. And so guess whose show they're probably going to listen to after they protein load and they go and work out? Evolving with Nita Jain. So this is the way we become top of mind. So I think let's bullet point that out. Let's get some ideas that we can experiment with your show, test a few of these topics. And I think you'll have a good response. Like maybe this is something you do is a few Instagram lives about, see people show up to engage there. And I think you'll hit a vein within this sub niche where you're like, all right, that's the thing. And then, like I said, you've got a year or more to perfect this and really make it your thing that you are known for to speak on. And all of a sudden, you bring that credential of I'm a podcast host. I have a brand. Yeah, I can come and speak on stages. I'm a paid speaker. So I know you talk about getting grant money and stuff like that, but this could be even an easier way for you to, actually have the podcast at least paying for itself, if not profitable, which is awesome. So, does that feel intimidating? Or does that feel realistic for you?
No, I feel like this is really actionable, and I think it feeds into my love for science communication as it is. So I feel like it's very much in line with the route I would pursue normally, but it's just great to have it fleshed out in so much detail, because sometimes you do wonder, like, how am I going to support these creative efforts? And I feel like this is like a very viable way to do that.
Good. Well, I want you to feel that way. And just, again, like, you don't need my permission to do anything, but sometimes as a newer podcaster, it helps to have an experienced podcaster go, I really see you doing this. Like, I encourage you to, I don't think this is a waste of your time. And if you had some weird TED Talk idea and you're all about, like, I've had people like that. I'm like, listen, this is not what you want to be doing right now. But I do think this is a good use of your time, and you're my pod pal, and I wouldn't steer you into something that's going to be like, oh no, this is a waste. So like I said, you don't need my permission to do this, but I just want you to know that I think this is a really good idea for you. And I could see you actually doing this and it being fruitful for you as an entrepreneur, but also for your show and for your brand. You're going to impact more people. So that's what I know you are all about. Okay, let's shout out your brand. Let's while we're talking about evolving with Nita Jain, where do people go if they want to connect with you, if they want to book you to come on their show? Maybe we got some health podcasters listening. They're like, I would love to have a female come on and talk about intermittent fasting for women under 30 and how that impacts their gut health. So how do people get a hold of you, Nita?
So my email list is at nitajain.substack.com, and people can also find me on LinkedIn. It's just Nita Jain. I'm going to be creating a lot of content over the next 6 weeks for LinkedIn's Creator Accelerator program. So that'll be around like health tech, quantified self, and precision medicine. So if anyone's on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect with you. I'm also on Twitter, and my handle there is Health Unveiled.
All right.
I really love this approach, though, because I feel like, with public speaking, you're potentially reaching a lot more people versus the one-on-one stuff, which is how consultancy works for me. Right. So I really love that. Yeah. The ability to, do something once, but reach so many more people and potentially have more of an impact in that regard.
Yeah. And I know you're all about impact. You mentioned that several times. We've talked a few different times. You mentioned that. I'm like, this woman really wants to do something. So, I think that you are gonna help a lot of people, Nita. That's something I'm very confident on. All you have to do is keep showing up. You get to episode 52, and we're gonna have a little pod pal party and be like, all right, first year in the books. I learned how to be a podcaster, and the impact will happen. I'm pretty confident of that. Cool.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate all the mentorship, and your reels are just really entertaining as well, by the way. Your daughter's the cutest. I love her.
Hannah Shibley is she's a star. She legit wants to have her own Disney show. So if anybody from Disney's out there listening, give me a call. And she is missing her top front tooth right now, which makes it just like very marketable, very marketable. So anyway, shout out to my daughter, my 7-year-old daughter, Hannah. Well, cool. Well, for all you all listening in, if you want to be just like my pod pal Nita here and you want to do a podcast audit, hit the link on the website, podcastingbusiness.school. Get signed up. we've got a bit of a wait list, and I'd love to get you in, and that way you can be a part of the show, just like Nita. So Nita, thank you for joining me here. And for everybody listening in, I'm going to send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you next time.
See